And that's something that I just can't get out of my head, Krystal. I mean, this Duke incident is just bullshit. I mean, the way that this university continues to handle itself. Again, the player herself, I'm not going to call her character into question. I have no idea what she thought she might hear, because that's scary and it's probably weird. But the Oberlin case, the Duke case, these people don't apologize. They triple down at nearly every course. And I think it's ripping society apart. And they're being employed and propped up by our false, student loan scheme.
So I'm not sure there's much you can do about private universities because, look, they're in the business of it's basically a business. And
loans subsidized.
Part of why you end up with the universities being terrified of the students, especially like the fringe, most outspoken students. And it isn't a majority. It is like the most outspoken fringe. This is what you see in organizations. It's like, it's used as a weapon to basically silence everybody else who might disagree, right? The reason that they feel such pressure is because basically they see the students as like their customers that they have to be able to appeal to and be able to recruit and be able to make sure that they can get like the wealthiest students in the next year. And in terms of private universities, I'm not sure that there's that much you can do about that because that's the business model you have set up. I think the stronger case is to be made in the public universities where, you now have the incentive where it's like, okay, I have to like coddle the students. I have to make sure I don't get crosswise with them. And at times it interferes with it being sort of like a neutral institution of learning versus backing up the most ideological fringe of the student body. And so I think that's the area that there's more you could do from a federal government level. I will say I'm not really clarify for me, what do you see as the solution? Because that's the part I don't quite understand.
I mean, for me, it really is. You have to have some sort of endowment tax. You have to basically ban the ability for tuition raises to go up by certain increments. You have to make it so that exact areas of spending for some of these colleges with public money is just off, basically off the table. Because we give them so much deference in what they're allowed to do, which I think is outrageous.
Because I think the core, so, the defunding of public universities starts really with Ronald Reagan in California. We talked about this some before. And basically, he used the anti-war protests at UC Berkeley. And especially, I'm sure, I don't even know what was going on. I'm sure there was stuff that was like cringy and fringe.
Berkeley was the epicenter.
Berkeley was the epicenter. It was the most sort of extreme in sort of those protests. I don't doubt that they were like disparaging the soldiers and things like that outside of just protesting the war. So he uses this cultural flashpoint to say, similar to what you're saying here, we need to burn these institutions to the ground. We need to defund them. So that messaging about the sort of like ideological disposition of this one university in particular was used to defund the universities. And then that's actually how you end up with these escalating tuition costs, everything escalating, and them having to then cater more to the students rather than focusing on education and being public institutions really instead of having more of a private learning. So that's my only caution is like when we make an ideological case against like woke professors or woke administrators or whatever, that shouldn't be used as a justification to further defund these schools because that was actually the root of the problem is that ideological case that was made by Republicans starting with Ronald Reagan and continuing on for decades actually exacerbated the problem and made these universities so unaffordable, too, for the broader masses.
I completely agree. What happened is they basically pulled out public funding, then they had to rely on public funding with no cap, right? So then that leads to all kinds of the explosion of an insane thing. I'm basically proposing the opposite. I think you leverage public funding in order to say you need to completely reform your administration and you have to cap your ability to profit. So you're kind of squeezing things from the middle. The lazy river and the rest of this stuff, look, that's probably even more egregious, especially when you consider the dorm. The insane thing about Oberlin is the tuition is only $60,000. The other 20 comes from housing. It's Ohio. I mean, since when does it cost $20,000 to live? I think that's crazy.
And Oberlin is less of an issue if you have actually affordable public institutions.
University of Ohio, OSU, all these places, they also, by the way, charge astronomically high rates. But they also have similar of a problem.
Well, and what you end up with is this situation where tuition and housing, the whole package cost is just insanely unaffordable. we closed off the paths to get to the middle class without going to college. And it's like, you have to go to college if you're going to be able to have any chance at a middle class life. That's been the message to generations of young people now. But then the costs are so insane that you can really only afford it if you're an elite. And so then you've got these students who were saddled, who were like sold a bill of goods and saddled with a lifetime of debt. So, I mean, listen, we've debated this a lot. That's why I think even though, yes, there's plenty more reform to be done and these institutions need to be better funded and there need to be tuition caps, I support all of that 100%. But I also support doing the thing we can do now, which is to give these students who have been screwed over some relief that we can give them.
One thing I'll say not to dispute is the students are the least culpable in this entire thing. I don't blame any of them for a second. I blame a much, much bigger forces. I really do think that those people need to pay a big price. And unfortunately, I don't see that coming. Or maybe it will. I don't know. You know, the right talks a big game about going after education. My guess is they'll do absolutely.
That's usually safe.
Okay.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.